Hi guys, and welcome back to Macaroon. Here's the second compilation of DIY gift ideas that you can make this year. If you haven't seen the first one, then be sure to check it out here. This time I have 3 craft projects inspired by current pop culture. This includes a Squid Game bottle cap, an Animal Crossing Bobble Head, and a Bitcoin squishy. So without any further ado, let's get started with the first tutorial. I've started playing Animal Crossing again after all the new updates, so I felt inspired to make a DIY bobblehead using clay. This method can be used for any character you like, and I'm going to go with Anka, who is one of my favorite villagers. To start with, you'll need a lightweight paper clay, and my favorite brand is Hearty Soft by Pedico. Then you'll need a clickable pen like this. We're going to be cutting it up, so choose one which has already dried out or which you don't want to use anymore. And for all the detail work, you'll need some acrylic paint and brushes. First, unscrew the pen and remove the inner tube. If you look closely, you'll see there's a small bump which prevents the spring from sliding too far down. You want to cut the ink tube at exactly the halfway point of where the spring sits on this bump. This creates a super easy mechanism for making the bobblehead. Now take the outer part of the pen and fill it with glue. Press the spring inside and let everything dry completely. Next, grab some paper clay, and I highly recommend using a good quality one for this DIY. I'm going to create a yellow base color for Anka using acrylic paint. Then I'm making a dome shape for the head and pushing in the base a bit. This creates a hollow space for the spring. Make sure you're happy with the head shape before adding the ears, because it gets increasingly difficult to make corrections. Animal Crossing cat villagers have very sharp ears, so I'm going to use scissors to enhance the shape. I'm making her dress with white clay and then adding on some arms. Now I'm cutting a toothpick in half to create some extra support for the legs. Just wrap each one with clay and insert it into the dress. And lastly, I'm pushing the pen tube into the body until the little plastic bump sits just above the clay. A bobblehead figure needs a very stable base to prevent it from tipping over. I'm simply using a large piece of flattened clay and then sticking the legs into place. Now, carefully wrap the spring piece with some damp clay and attach this inside the hollow part of the neck. Then keep pushing it inwards until the spring is no longer visible. I'm going to use acrylic paint to add the final details. The nice thing about Animal Crossing villagers is that most of them only have one base color with 2 or 3 accent colors. So this method works great with almost anyone, and you don't have a huge amount of painting to do. To make the necklace, I'm going to paint on a base color and then use glitter for details. I think this gives it a nice change of texture, which enhances the final piece. And now we just need to connect the 2 pieces and our bobblehead is finished. I'm really pleased with this method and will probably make a few more Animal Crossing characters like this. The next DIY is a Squid Game bottle cap. This is based on a viral TikTok I posted featuring a 3D printed bottle cap from Etsy. That one was hilarious, but it didn't fit all types of bottles, so I got the idea of making a DIY version using clay. I've already made an emoji one for the last video, so I decided to go a bit darker for this one. I'm going to use the red light green light doll from Squid Game, which seems quite fitting because her eyes are the movement scanners. Start by drawing out the positions for the eyes. I'm using a hand drill, which is normally designed for making holes in resin pieces. This works surprisingly well on plastic bottle caps, and you just have to hold it in place and turn it with your other hand. Since the drill bits are pretty small, I'm going to widen the hole using a scalpel. For the next part, you'll need paper clay, and I made a mistake by using one of the very cheap clays that I bought for this video here. I still had so much left that I just wanted to use it up, but I realized that it's really difficult to sculpt with. The main problem is that this clay has a lot of paper fibers inside, which has a tendency to melt upon contact with water. It reminds me a lot of Daiso clay, which is fine for large pieces, but is not ideal for small detailed work. However, after a bit of struggling, I did manage to get the overall shape of the doll done, and I will leave this to harden. When adding color, it's important to use acrylic paint or nail polish, which has a water-resistant surface when dry. Especially since this clay seems quite susceptible to moisture, I'm painting on several layers to give it more protection. A tiny detail you might have missed in Squid Game is that the doll's hair clip has the squid logo on it. So I'm just going to add that in using a very fine brush. So in the end, this one actually turned out pretty well, and the paint covered up a lot of the unevenness from the paper fibers. These bottle caps can increase in creepiness depending on what kind of liquid you use. I'm going to go with grape juice, which is slightly less disturbing than cranberry or tomato juice. If you make something with elements sticking out, like the pigtails here, then you have to be quite careful when screwing the lid back on. Be sure to apply pressure on the lid part only and not any of the clay pieces sticking out. I think this gift requires a fairly specific taste, but those who do like it will appreciate it a lot. And now moving on to our final DIY, which is a Bitcoin squishy. I think all of us know someone who's super into cryptocurrency right now, and those who love it really treat it like a lifestyle. There isn't a lot of crypto merch available, so you can get pretty creative with DIY options. I bought these silicone Bitcoin molds from AliExpress, and they also work for resin, chocolate, soap, or wax. I'm going to use Sophie and Toffee's squishy gel, and I also want to test out 2 different methods to see which one produces the shiniest gold surface. As always, I'm starting by measuring out equal parts of both gels. Then I'm adding some yellow coloring to create the base. I'm going to use this gold pigment, and I'm applying this to the inside of the mold with a brush. This normally works pretty well and maximizes the shine on the outer surface. Now I'm just pouring the squishy resin inside and leaving it to set. For the second attempt, I'm going to mix the pigment directly inside, and I'm kind of curious to see whether this makes a difference. So here are the molds after a few days, and the resin has cured, but it's a tiny bit softer than I would have liked. I started demolding the first one and noticed right away that the pigment isn't sticking to the surface. I think it's because the mold design is too complex and the particles are getting stuck inside these ridges. The final result doesn't look that great because you can see the transparent parts of the squishy underneath. The mold also needs a complete cleaning because there's so many bits of gold stuck in here. To my surprise, the second method worked a lot better. All the gold pigment is inside the resin, so you don't get a mess while demolding. Here you can see a comparison of the two. The only thing I would have done differently is to use a bit more hardener when mixing the resin. These are both a bit too soft, and even though you can squish them, they still feel kind of fragile. I think a sturdier squishy that you can use as keychain or fidget toy would have been nicer. But on the whole, I'm quite pleased with how these turned out, and if you have the right equipment, then they're very easy to make as well. So I hope you like these DIY ideas, and please follow me for more. Most of my videos in the run-up to Christmas will be suitable for last-minute gifts. I'm Joanna, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.